Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our main event for UFC Rio. In this matchup, we have the former lightweight champion Charles "Du Bronx" Oliveira taking on short notice replacement Mateusz Gamrot or Mateusz Gamrot. I've heard it both ways. So, looking at their last five fights and their overall records, Oliveira is 35 and 11 as a professional, 2 and 3 in his last five fights, while Gamrot is 25 and 3 as a professional, 4 and 1 in his last five fights. So this is short notice for Gamrot. He's coming in on about 2 weeks' notice. It was supposed to be Rafael Fiziev, but unfortunately he got injured and had to pull out. And there was some jarring of who would step in for Fiziev. I'm sure there were plenty of people who might have put their names into the hat. But Gamrot was the one who wanted this fight the most, and looks like he got his wish. Also, I don't really know how many people really wanted to fight Charles Oliveira in Brazil. That is walking into fire, or the proverbial lion's den, I tell you that. Man, looking at this fight, I think I like this more than the Fiziev fight. I know that's weird to say because Fiziev is such a fun striker and so explosive. I'm sure him and Oliveira was basically a finish waiting to happen. But I weirdly have always wanted to see Gamrot versus Oliveira, mainly due to the grappling. I know some people think Gamrot is boring, and there are definitely some fights where he does seem boring, like his fight with Rafael dos Santos wasn't the most exciting. But it really depends on styles, and styles make fights, and it all depends on the matchup. In this case, with my cat trying to make a little cameo here, when Gamrot fights a fellow elite high level grappler, it is so fun. Like, watch his fight with Arman Sarukian is one of the best fights I've ever seen with such a grapple heavy approach. Or I guess most of the fight was grapple heavy. Or shoot, his fight with Benil Dariush was pretty fun. And also his fight with like Garam Kutedalaze. Hell, his fight against Dan Hooker was really fun. So it really depends on the stylistic matchup. Like when Gamrot fights high level wrestlers and high level grapplers, it is such a treat to watch. And that's exactly what Charles is. Now, looking at their last five, Oliveira has been trading wins and losses since losing to Islam Makhachev at UFC 281. Then he got a win when he TKO'd Benil Dariush at UFC 289. Then lost a close decision to Arman Sarukian, which was a number one contenders bout, even though I do think Oliveira won that fight. But it's what it is. Then he came back at UFC 309, defeated Michael Chandler in the rematch, which was the first and only fight in his career where he'd gone all 5 rounds. And then most recently at UFC 317 this June, he got knocked out viciously by Ilya Topuria. Meanwhile, Gamrot, he was riding a 3-fight win streak, beating Jalen Turner, TKOing Rafael Fiziev, which was due to an injury though, and then beating RDA at UFC 299. Then suffered the third loss in his career when he lost a split decision to Dan Hooker back at UFC 305, in a fight where I did think Hooker won, but if like someone told me they thought Gamrot won, I wouldn't dispute that too much. I mean, it was really close. And then most recently, this May, he defeats Ludovic Klein. You know, it's kind of interesting with Gamrot, thinking of his 3 losses to Garam, Benil Dariush, and Dan Hooker. Only one of those was ever a clear loss. The other 2 were very close contested decisions. Now, looking at their overall styles, this is going to be a grappler's delight. Charles Oliveira is well known as the best submission artist in UFC history. I mean, the most submissions in UFC history, most finishes in UFC history. The man is a certified killer. And it's so interesting seeing him progress from his UFC career. Everyone kind of knows the story of Charles Oliveira. He started off as a high-level featherweight, but some things with weight issues. There were plenty of times when he missed weight. Just never seemed to get over the hump when he lost to guys like Ricardo Lamas or Max Holloway, Cub Swanson, Frankie Edgar. It always seemed that he would crumble under adversity. He had such high-level skills. His jiu-jitsu, even back then when he submitted Darren Elkins and Escudero. Oh, when like his first two UFC fight were so impressive. But it seemed like he really did just crumble under adversity. I don't want to say, I mean, labeling him a quitter. I refuse to call Charles Olivera a quitter, especially how he is now. But there was a time where, like I said, he crumbled under adversity. But then that all changed when he lost to Paul Felder. And then the birth of his daughter, which led to him just kind of flipping a switch and saying, fuck everything else. I'm crushing these people. And then he just evolved as his career went on, training with the Shoot the Box at Diego Lima. And you saw where his striking had always been very powerful, and he had always had a lot of good weapons. But once he really dialed it in and started going on that 11-fight win streak, you saw his striking progress so well. He has some of the best Muay Thai in the lightweight division. He's got great jumping knees, good teep kicks, elbows in close, knees. His punches and leg kicks are very proficient, very powerful. He hits so hard. I mean, you hear like how Justin Gaethje, one of the most notoriously durable fighters in the lightweight division, not only got rocked but dropped by Olivera, and even he has openly admitted that that was the hardest he had ever been hit. So yeah, Olivera's power is no joke. I mean, he hurt and dropped Chandler. He hurt Poirier. He's hurt a lot of his opponents over the course of his career. I mean, and not to just talk about the submission game, which is so elite. You know a guy is so dangerous on the ground when they can not only submit you from either on bottom, but on top, but just about any which way they want to, really. If you don't mind your P's and Q's when fighting Olivera on the ground, you're in trouble. Hell, most fighters don't even want to go to the ground with him because they fear that guard game. Most fighters, if they hurt him and he falls, they're not going to follow up just because the guard game is too dangerous. You saw that with like Gaethje. Gaethje refused to really try and entertain that at all. It was a smart move, but unfortunately it just didn't work when when Olivera just fought back with fire. I mean, shoot, the man has a calf slicer on his UFC wins, one of the rare submissions you can get in MMA. Just so many dangers when Olivera. It's such a well-rounded threat, from knocking people out on the feet to submitting them from anywhere, whether he's on your back while you're standing, or you're in his guard, or he's on top, side control. It doesn't matter. Most fighters cannot handle the grappling of Olivera. Now, there are very few who can. Islam's one of them. Sarukian's one of them. Beneil, for long portions of their fight, was able to make the grappling pretty much a standstill until Olivera blasted him with a head kick and just finished it off with ground and pound. I mean, shoot, even then, Olivera has either submitted or shown dominance on the ground against fellow elites like Kevin Lee. I know Kevin Lee didn't turn out to be all that great, or I take that back, wasted potential. But still, Olivera submitting him was quite impressive at that time. I mean, mauling Tony Ferguson. I know that was when Tony Ferguson was starting to go on that skid, but at the time, people thought, man, it's like a change in the guard. I mean, the way he mauled Tony Ferguson. Like I said, though, very few fighters can match him on the ground. I think Gamrot's one of them. That leads me to Mateusz Gamrot. Boy, like I said, I know he's boring at times. I know not everyone loves him, but his says something about his level of. Well, I mean, he's a gamer. His gamemanship and just competitiveness to say yes to a fight on 2 weeks' notice against a former champion, top 5 of lightweight, one of the hardest divisions to be top 5 in, and fighting in his home country, especially one as pro-nationalism, or nationalism is not the best word I can use, but basically such a countryman type nation like Brazil, where, viva morrer, you're gonna die. Fighting someone like, Olivera is a special Brazilian, even among Brazilians, just because the man's story is so great. He is worshipped like a hero, and rightfully so. Very few people dislike Charles Olivera. I love Charles Olivera as much as the next MMA fan. And I mean, I'm going off on a tangent here, but basically I'm saying how much I applaud just Gamrot's willingness to do this. Now, of course, at the same time, you got to think he has to take this. Not many fighters really want to fight him. I mean, shoot, his last fight was Ludovic Klein, and he was number 7 in the weight class fighting an unranked guy. Kind of shows how many people don't really want to fight him. For Gamrot, his style is kind of like Marab in a way. He's like the lightweight Marab or dollar store Marab, but his skills are very elite. I don't want to say it like that because it feels like I'm making him seem less than what he is. For Gamrot, he is, I think, the best chain wrestler in the UFC. I don't think he's the best pure wrestler or even like the best MMA wrestler in the lightweight division, but he might be the best chain wrestler. His ability to shoot from single leg to double leg, switch it to high crotch, put his opponent down, take out their base, give him or make him refuse to give height, switch to a tight waist, switch to a body lock, switch to a headlock. His ability to just transition from different holds at such lightning fast speed, it's insane to watch. Now, his striking is not the best. I will say that. His boxing has seemingly gotten better and better as time goes on, but his head still sometimes is there to be hit. And while he does start moving his head more, it's not the best head movement. It's kind of obvious where he's turning his head. Not really those subtle movements. But I mean, at the same time, Olivera doesn't move his head either. He keeps this tight Muay Thai guard. And, I think he said openly how, like, he's kind of practically blind in the octagon. He literally sees three and just hits the middle. Or hits the guy in the middle. That's essentially how I think he's described how he sees in the octagon. Because he can't fully see. So you don't see Olivera actually incorporate too much head movement. He is kind of hittable. But like I said, he does keep a good Muay Thai shell more times than not. And most of the time when he's rocked, again, guys don't want to jump on that guard. It's too dangerous. But back to Gamrot. It's oddly enough, for as great as his chain wrestling is, his control is not the best. You've seen a lot of fighters get up from his top pressure, but at the same time, his grappling is more so very his wrestling and grappling are very scramble heavy. Gamrot's is, and I think he just thrives in the scrambles because when you're fighting him in those scrambling type situations, Gamrot knows for a fact he's got one of the best gas tanks in the lightweight division. And most fighters cannot keep up with that grueling scrambles and that heavy wrestler pressure, especially when he starts pressing them against the cage, constantly forcing them to fight off takedowns. It is exhausting, but he's still then ready to go. I mean, I guess the best example would be easily his fight with Arman Tsarukyan. Now, I know most people thought Tsarukyan won that fight. Fair enough. But I mean, at the end of the fight, Gamrot was out wrestling Tsarukyan. He was clearly the more fresher fighter than Tsarukyan, and I mean, you saw the look on Tsarukyan's face by the end of the fifth. He was tired, and it looked like Gamrot was ready to go another round. And it just really shows how good his scrambles is because shot for shot, setup for setup, they were more or less deadlocked with the Tsarukyan and Gamrot with their ability to either stuff their opposition's takedown or get up, or their ability to get up once they were taken down. But it was Gamrot's ability to constantly switch up his entries, switch his if one takedown failed, he just switched to the next setup instantaneously to get Tsarukyan down. I cannot really, how do I want to say this? I don't think I can specify or just implore you how good this chain wrestling of his is, how good his scrambles is, really. Also, like I said, he is often the fresher fighter. Ludovic Klein is like the most recent example where Klein had shown good takedown defense before and was doing pretty good on the feet. It's just that pressure, man. That wrestler pressure, that ability to scramble. You saw it on Klein's face. He was so tired by the end of that fight. That's what happens to most of his fights. From like Jalen Turner just not being able to handle that wrestling, even with his length and reach, like his height and reach advantage, his natural power. Couldn't do it. And neither could RDA, who granted is pretty long in the tooth, but a very well-practiced jiu-jitsu practitioner. It's just really good. Now, how these two meet in the middle, that's the big question. As I said, Gamrot is not the best striker. I do believe Charles Olivera is going to be the better striker for sure. He has more weapons, better overall technique. Hits harder too. I know Gamrot has one knockout, and that was to Scott Holtzman, but that doesn't really mean much. But there is that big X factor. The biggest thing coming into this fight, more so specifically when it was Rafael Fiziev, was is Charles Olivera coming back too quickly? Now, against Fiziev, absolutely. I mean, this guy got knocked out for the first time in his career against Ilia Topuria back in June. I mean, June 27th. Now, I know, like he's been finished before. Most of his other like KO or TKO win or losses, those were all TKOs. He never been knocked out cold like that. That was easily the worst knockout loss of his career. And now he's coming back October 11th in comparison to June. It's not even, well, let's see, right? July, August, September, or October. Not even really 4 months, honestly. Not even. It's like 3 months and a few weeks at best. Might not even be 3 months. But still, though, coming back this quickly after getting dusted is not good. Now, again, Gamrot does not necessarily have the biggest power in the lightweight division. And when it was Fiziev, there was that worry if Fiziev catches Olivera, could he knock him out again? Now, that being said, like I said, because this is such a quick turnabout for Olivera, maybe Gamrot can actually hurt him bad in this fight. Like I said, his boxing may not be the best, but he still has a stinging 1-2, and he's especially good at dipping down and then throwing that cross as he dips. And it catched a lot of better strikers than him. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for me to think he could hurt Olivera in this fight on the feet. As I said, man, this is such a quick turnabout for Olivera, especially coming off the worst knockout loss of your career. I mean, it was kind of the worry with Max Holloway coming into the Dustin Poirier fight. How's he going to come back from being knocked out for the first time ever? So, with that said, though, the ground game is what I really want to delve into because there are so many levels that this fight can take place in once it hits the mat. Now, I see one of three things happening. Either A, they kind of cancel each other out, right? Olivera's submission threats and overall positional awareness can counter Gamrot's chain wrestling and his scramble heavy style to where they kind of cancel each other out, and it's mostly contested on the feet. 2, Olivera's submission threats are just so good that he's able to catch Gamrot when he gets reckless. Because if there is one knack to Gamrot's style, it's that he at times overshoots and literally puts himself just in a bad position. And the best way I can describe how it is like he shoots in for a leg and he drives in with so much force, he kind of just goes past his opponent. And his opponents are either able to get their leg out or just build height very quickly and get up. And I can see Gamrot getting overzealous, possibly exposing his neck, and Olivera cinches up a choke. That can definitely happen. Or 3, Gamrot utilizes his scrambles and heavier top pressure to, say, chest to chest, and keep Olivera grounded, throw in some strikes every now and again, but mostly it's his top pressure and control that could win him this fight. It's possible. There are times where Olivera just seems to be too comfortable off his back. I grant it. I say this when the man has the most submission wins in UFC history. So, of course, he's going to be comfortable off his back, as it has helped him so many times. But against elite guys like Islam and Sarukian, who kept that heavy top pressure, chest to chest, they didn't, well, I take it back. Islam never got even close to getting submitted by Olivera. It was more or less a stalemate on the ground. Now, while Sarukian, on the other hand, did get caught in a few tight chokes, that guillotine in the first, that Darce in the third. Still, though, in specifically the second round, you saw it and his top pressure was just so good and so suffocating, and he would only break every now and again to throw in a slashing elbow. Olivera wasn't really able to do much, or at least get his butterfly hooks in to create space, snitch up an arm, go for a triangle. Nothing. He couldn't really achieve much of anything on the ground against Sarukian when the top pressure. Now, Gamrot might be able to implement something similar. Thing is, like I said, he doesn't have as much, he's not as good with his control as those two. In comparison to with me saying before, his more scramble heavy style. His style is more about movement and wasting his opponent's energy. until he's the fresher man and kind of wins the rest of the fight by just having the better gas tank. Kind of like I said, like Marab, but just that lightweight. Boy, this is such a tough fight to predict because if Oliveira didn't get knocked out, I do believe he would win pretty handily. Now, Gamrot's not an easy fight for anybody, but I feel like Oliveira could implement something similar to what Beneil Dariush did, a scramble heavy fight, but mostly to ward off the wrestling attacks from Gamrot and then make him pay for either sloppy entries, not properly setting up his shots, or just being the better technical striker. But with Oliveira suffering the knockout loss, and I know I sound like a broken record talking about it, but it is such an important thing to factor into this fight that I really do give Gamrot a chance in this. Odds-wise, it's pick'em -110 on both sides. Now I know as the fight went, or as we reached fight week, the odds shifted ever so slightly every now and again. Mostly it was Gamrot being like a -130 to -120. This fight was always kind of a pick'em, but even more so now as we reach the fight tomorrow night is essentially literally a coin flip. And I agree, it is a coin flip fight because there's so many directions this fight can go once it hits the mat. On the feet, I feel like it's more clear who could win and who should win on the feet. Because I think Oliveira is still the better technical striker, has more natural power and better weapons. But I really give Gamrot a shot in this. Like I said, his boxing is, I think, still good enough to at least find the chin of Oliveira, be able to crack him, and Gamrot might not be the hardest, might not be a world beater when it comes to his striking power. He still has some good pop in his hands. And considering how many fights Oliveira's had, I mean, good God, he has 47 fights. He's literally 3 fights short of reaching 50 pro MMA fights. And thinking about how many of those are in the UFC, where he's fighting the best of the best, that's a lot of damage he's taken over the years. Now, granted, hey, Gamrot's no spring chicken, he's 34. It's kind of now or never for him in this situation, because you would think if he loses, is he ever going to get really an opportunity like this? The problem with lightweight right now is kind of log jam at the top. Most of the top contenders don't want to fight each other. They want to fight for the title. And you got a champion in Ilia Topuria, who isn't the most active guy. As much as I love watching him fight, he's not the most active fighter. I do feel like once we find out who gets the first title shot in Ilia's new reign, we kind of have this domino effect. I mean, we already have Sarukian versus Hooker for the #1 contender fight. Right, so I suppose the pieces will start moving about, and we'll actually see how this division all shapes up. But with that said, to go to my official prediction, I might get a lot of flack for this. I know not people are going to love this pick, but I'm going to go Mateusz Gamrot, and I'm going to go with a decision. Now, I know, decision in Rio with Oliveira or any of these other Brazilian legends, that's a tough task to ask to win a decision in that. I know. And I know there are so many people who love Oliveira who think he can get another win in. And trust me, I love Oliveira too. But I think it's Gamrot's time. I do. Like I said, I know not many people love the pick, but my biggest reasons for picking Mateusz Gamrot is, without even just thinking about the knockout, which is always going to be in the back of my head with talking about this fight, but I think Gamrot is one of the few fighters on the lightweight roster who can hang with Oliveira on the mat and not get submitted. I think he can make smart positional choices. I think he's going to hold the more dominant positions for longer portions of the fight. And I think he can crack Oliveira on the feet. Now, I think while on the feet, it's much more of a danger to Gamrot because you've seen it. He's been dropped in almost every single fight. If not all, no, yeah. In almost every single fight of his, he's been dropped. Dariush dropped him. Sarukian dropped him. Hooker dropped him. Klein didn't. Fiziev, I know, hurt him. And who else? Who else am I thinking of? Because I know, like I said, or I take it back. Not every single fight of Gamrot he's been dropped, but he has been dropped 5 times in his UFC career. That's not a good look. Now, Oliveira has been dropped roughly a similar number of times, if not a little more. So on the feet, like I said, there is some worry for Gamrot, especially if he gets hurt and and especially if he gets hurt and dropped, because Oliveira will just snatch up that neck or finish with ground and pound like that. But I trust in the fight IQ of Gamrot. That's mainly where I'm going with this. I think his positional, like I said, his ability to get better positions will win the day. He's going to have the more dominant position, I believe, and win off control time. And then, like I said, on the feet, I think he can still catch Oliveira and still hurt him. And then the fourth biggest reason, motivation. I know that's like an odd thing to really think about when picking a fight, but there are some things where, not unlike their physical specs, not unlike the UFC stats or whatever, but like mentally up here, right? You gotta think where both men are at. Oliveira suffering a knockout loss, the worst of his career. He has a chance to redeem himself in his home country in front of his people, and more or less just like, I wouldn't say reinvent himself, but like bring some of the hype back, bring in like show people do Bronx isn't out of the title picture just yet. For Gamrot though, I mean, the man literally lives in his gym when he's on fight weeks. Have to leave his family in Poland to try and give them a better life. He finally gets the biggest fight of his career, undoubtedly, against hit the most high profile opponent. I know Sarukian. If Gamrot wins, I think Sarukian is still a better win, but this is still the most high profile opponent he's ever fought. And this is, I feel like, now or never. I think Gamrot's not really going to get another chance like this. So I believe Gamrot's going to take this opportunity, take it by how that saying go? Scruff of the neck, and then just, I got a better analogy. This inch that Gamrot's been given, he's going to take it all the way to a mile. I think he's going to use this to catapult himself into the title conversation. And I think this is the biggest opportunity in Gamrot's life, and I don't think he wants to waste this opportunity by losing. So I am going to go with Mateusz Gamrot, and I'm going to pick him via decision. But that being said, that's been my breakdown of this matchup. If you like the video, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Overall, what do you think of the Rio card? I think it's all right on paper. I think I give it like a 6 to 7 out of 10. There's not a lot of high-level matchups per se. The main card is really fun. But also, it's like thinking almost every single fight on the prelims has a fighter coming off a loss. Kind of crazy to think about. And of course, what do you think of the main event? Do you think Oliveira is going to pull off a big win in Brazil? Do you think Gamrot is going to pull the biggest win, what could be the biggest win of his career? And overall, what do you think? What do you see? How do you see the fight playing out? But with that being said, I've been Bill from Brutal Commentary. Thank you all for listening. Take care.